think tonight, since tomorrow is not a vacation, and I think it's actually very important that you get enough sleep, that you don't find that just the teachings are going on just too long, and then it's a long drive home, you have to get up early. I think probably we should end no later than 9:45. Probably better, give you a chance to get home, yeah? We can end early if you like. I'm happy to end earlier, maybe even 9:30. Why don't we just have a show of hands? Because I like to serve you as well as I can. But if you're not getting enough sleep, then that's not serving you very well. So why don't we have these two options, 9:30 or 9:45, but definitely no later than that. And please, just utterly express your wish. Don't worry about what I want. I don't care. How many would like to end punctually at 9:30? How many would like? And how many would like to go on until 9:45? Okay, in this room, I'm going to assume, maybe brashly, that in the other two rooms where I can't see that it's similar, but it was quite strong, 9:45. Having said that, for those of you who have voted for 9:30, I'd like to offer you that you very freely may leave, so we can even take a break. I will try to keep my eyes on the clock when it comes to 9:30, because I know some of you may have long drives home. And I completely sympathize. And I don't want to hold you here when you're thinking, oh, I won't get enough sleep and so forth. So why don't we make it good for everybody? So at 9:30, you can also watch your watch. But please feel there's no discourtesy, no disrespect. Please feel free to leave at 9:30, okay? Then everybody gets what we need. But we won't go beyond 9:45, okay? We have a lot of questions that have built up. Now I have the questions from 2 nights ago and leftover questions from tonight. So if you have no questions tonight, we'll have plenty of questions. But I'm not too hopeful about that. Hola, so. I'd like to make some brief comments about the significance of shamatha, of actually achieving shamatha, access to the first jhana. But of course, I want to discuss a little bit this practice, but we will have tomorrow also to go back. And tomorrow we'll look at a classic presentation from the 19th century, which I've translated into English, that sets out in one page, gives really quite complete and very clear instructions on the practice we've just done, so that you have for future reference. So we'll look at that tomorrow night, but I'd like to look at just some of the major points, the rationale for really spending time in shamatha, and not simply immediately going to Vipassana or Dzogchen or Mahamudra or Zazen. Why spend time in this more basic practice? And I think the reason for this is very clearly stated by the Buddha himself. He did teach Shila, Samadhi, Prajna, and the Samadhi is, just as the Shila, the ethics, is an indispensable foundation for Samadhi. You'll never achieve Samadhi if you're maintaining very poor ethics, if one is being angry and abusive and a lot of craving and so forth and so on. It doesn't matter. Atisha, the great Atisha said, if you do not establish the prerequisites for the internal prerequisites and having some conducive environment for achieving shamatha, he said you can meditate 1,000 years and not achieve shamatha. All right, so he's showing, above all, really cultivating the mind, establishing a whole way of life that is conducive to this real refinement of the attention, the balancing of the mind that comes through shamatha. And just as ethics is absolutely indispensable for the cultivation of samadhi, so for the vipassana practice to be fully effective. And all types of wisdom practices, I think Zen, Mahamudra, Dzogchen, and so forth, all of these, for them to be fully effective, there must be, according to the teachings of the Buddha himself, it's very clear, this unification or union of the shamatha and vipassana. Okay? It's very clear. This is not an opinion. It's not some special interpretation. It's utterly clear. So, what is the major point of achieving shamatha? Well, on the one hand, it's perfectly obvious. If we've not trained the attention will be untrained, which means we'll probably bring all the habits to the meditation, the habits of attentional imbalances, of agitation and dullness, which pretty much characterizes modern life, right? That is, when we're working, we get agitated. When we go for entertainment, we get agitated. We go for sports, we get agitated. Nowadays, especially young people, I listen to how they talk. And whenever they want to say, in America anyway, when they say they really like something, how do they say? I'm so excited about Angelina Jolie. I'm so excited about this movie, this new video game, this whatever. I'm so excited. They're just talking about the mind being agitated, right? And so whether it's through work, play, entertainment, whatever it is, the mind gets all stirred up. And after a while, it gets so exhausted, then we fall into dullness. need to take a nap, we fall asleep, and then we come back and be agitated again. So we're just like a pendulum that goes from agitation to dullness, agitation to dullness. And so if we think of the teachings of Vipassana, of Bodhicitta, the Brahma-viharas and so forth, as really the ambrosia of Dharma, to be poured into the mind, and to utterly like an elixir, like an alchemical elixir, to utterly transmute the mind, then the shamatha is creating of the mind a clean vessel. So when you pour in the nectar, you have a good container. Whereas a mind that is not trained at all in the shamatha, and is just bringing all this junk of oscillating between laxity and excitation and so forth, is like a dirty bowl. And you can pour even the most advanced teachings, Vajrayana teachings, the most advanced Vipassana practices, but you're pouring into a dirty bowl. So what is really central to the practice of shamatha and the eventual achievement of jhana, of dhyana, is the overcoming of what are called the 5 hindrances or the 5 obscurations. And these 5 are the obscuration of ill will, not just anger or hostility, but ill will, where we actually have an intention. Oh, I would like to put this person down by abuse or something. So the malice or ill will, animosity, enmity, this is one. And the enmity or ill will, I think we've all experienced it. We know it really disrupts the equilibrium of mind. There's no peace, there's no happiness. We can't enjoy a meal, we can't enjoy sleep, we can't enjoy entertainment, nothing. If the mind, insofar as the mind is overcome by ill will, it really obscures this brightly shining mind. This brightly shining mind. It obscures the natural purity and luminosity of awareness. That's why it's called nibbana or avarana. It obscures the luminosity and clarity, the purity of our own awareness. Right? So ill will, terribly disruptive. There's one. Then we have sensual craving. It's not simply enjoying the beauty of nature or other types of beauties or a lovely sound, the sound of a bird singing and so forth. It's not to say that we can never enjoy these. It's the craving, the clinging, the attachment. Why is this an obscuration? Because insofar as we're attached to sensual pleasures and so forth, the mind will never settle down in samadhi. Because we're always going out as if there's no inner resources. You know, oh, I must go out for it. Oh, here's something nice to look at. Here's something good to taste. Here's something nice to touch, to listen to, and so forth. The mind will never settle down. So it obscures, once again, the nibbana. It's a hindrance to achieving jhana. It obscures this brightly shining mind, the natural purity and luminosity of awareness. So ill will, sensual craving. And I'm going to be teaching this from the Sanskrit, so it's a little bit different interpretation, not very different, of the translations of these. So the first two, sensual craving, ill will, the same. But the second one, and I know the Tibetan especially, it's sometimes called sloth and torpor, but I find those more poetic than illuminating. The terms from the Tibetan are jingmu, and jingmu is the laxity. But when laxity sets in, we just lose the clarity. So right now I'm attending to your face, and I see it's very clear. I'm looking, my mind is clear, my eyes are clear. So boom, it's clear. But as I showed the cartoon last night, then we just start losing the clarity, right? And that's when laxity comes in. So that's the jingwa. Literally it means to sink. So it's almost as I'm coming out, as I attend to you, you see I'm almost as if my attention is coming out. And then, as I'm coming out, then watch. It's kind of a sinking, like my mind is coming out to reach you, to touch your face, right? And then it kind of, it loses it, and it starts to implode, and if it implodes all the way, then you fall asleep. So the sinking is a withdrawal, not into deep samadhi, into deep dullness. So it starts with laxity, the lack of clarity, or the loss of clarity, and then it goes into mukpa in Tibetan, and that means just flat out dullness. And you can see that just very obvious. We all know what dullness is. So it's laxity and then dullness. It's a gradient. Starts with laxity, then goes to dullness, then it goes to sleepiness and fast asleep. So those two are clearly their hindrances. This is why when we fall deep asleep, we don't achieve shamatha, right? We don't achieve the first jhana just by falling asleep. Why? Because dullness. So that's the third one. The fourth one, and again I'm going to the Sanskrit and the Tibetan, is in Tibetan is gu, and the gupa is excitation. In Tibetan, excitation. And this is the mind being agitated, being distracted, being turbulent, but specifically with the stem or the source of this excitation, this agitation, being desire. Desire, right? Some kind of craving, right? So there's another term, if the mind becomes disturbed because of anger, we don't call it excitation, we call that just agitation. So it's just kind of fine-tuning the words. But most of the time, when we're in samadhi, we're just practicing, and the mind gets agitated, mostly it's stemming from desire. Desire for something in the past, the present, the future, but the mind is disturbed and it goes out into excitation. So this in Tibetan, Göpa, has a quality of wildness, or a bit reckless, a bit like a wild horse kicking and bucking. And then the second one, Göpa, literally has the meaning of regret or remorse. It can have the connotation of guilt. And where there's regret, guilt, remorse, there can very easily come anxiety. And from the Pali, it's very often called restlessness and anxiety, right? Or hurry and flurry. Again, hurry and flurry is just poetic. I don't think it tells us much. So, but this connotation of regret, and I think we know what this is like. You can be sitting quietly and think, oh, but I did this, I did that, I shouldn't have done that, you know? And then it bogs us down. It bogs us down, and once again, we get caught up in that. Once again, it obscures this natural luminosity and purity of awareness. So that's the fourth one. And finally, here again, this commonality, Pali, Sanskrit, Tibetan, all the same. It's doubt, uncertainty, the wavering mind. Now, on the one hand, to have some degree of healthy skepticism, have a very critical mind, really wanting to understand. So one hears about Buddhist theory of rebirth. Say, well, why should I believe that? I don't believe that. What's the evidence? What's the reason? Why do you say that? This is critical. It's, I don't believe it just because you said it. Where's the evidence? Give me some reason. What about the materialist? That sounds pretty good to me. And then being skeptical, that's good. The Buddha never said, oh, don't doubt my teachings. You have to believe unquestioningly. Absolutely not. So doubt can be very constructive, as long as it's doubt in the pursuit of understanding, right? So eventually we move beyond the doubt and we come to clarity. We move from agnostic to gnostic, from not knowing to knowing. That's the trajectory. But the kind of doubt or uncertainty that is an obscuration is the doubt that is just wavering, uncertain, like, could I achieve shamatha? Oh, maybe, but then maybe not. Maybe I should try, but maybe not. Maybe I should quit practicing because it's probably not helpful. Oh, maybe not. It doesn't really let you settle and simply abandon, but it doesn't let you be single-pointed either and say, okay, enough. I've decided this is what I really want to do. I want to train my mind. I want to cultivate, so I will. Boom. It doesn't let you do that. So the analogy, without belaboring this too much, is trying to thread a needle when the thread is frayed. And you put one side into the needle, and then the other one doesn't. You say, oh, no, not that way. Oh, not that way. Oh, not that way, not that way. Never lets you get in. Never lets you be single-pointed. So we know, if you think about people that you know who have had great success in life, whether as meditators, in business, in medicine, education, whatever it is, I think you'll find they get single-pointed. They don't go, oh, maybe I could, but maybe I couldn't. Oh, I don't know if I can, maybe not, I don't know. Those people never accomplish anything, except for more doubt, okay? So these are the 5 obscurations, and this is what the Buddha said about insofar as the mind is dominated by these 5 obscurations. He said, so long as the 5 obscurations are not abandoned, one considers himself as indebted, sick, in bonds, enslaved, and lost in a desert track. So he's really saying this is a dysfunctional mind. This is an unhealthy mind, a disabled mind. I mean, those are pretty strong words he's using. There's this wonderful analogy the Buddha gives of the relationship of shamatha and vipassana. And as I remember, the analogy was that of a king who had a very unruly son who was hanging out with the bad crowd. And he's getting into drunkenness and partying and gambling and so forth. And the king really had to bring his son back on track. So he thought about sending out a very wise minister to his son and say, hey, snap out of it, shape up. But the son was pretty powerful, and the minister was afraid he would just kill the minister because he's got some power. And so the minister said, don't send me alone. Don't send me alone. He'll kill me. And so then the king thought, okay, I want you to go because only you can persuade the son to really settle down and shape up. But I'll send a strong warrior with you. And if the son tries to make mischief, we'll put the warrior onto him. And so they send the two out. And the wise minister then accosts the young prince and said, hey, you must stop this. And the young monk got really snotty. The young monk, the prince, not the young monk. But he got really kind of like this, really rebellious. And he said, who are you? You can't boss me around. And the warrior came over, grabbed him by the head and said, you either listen to the minister or I'm going to cut your head off right now. Oh, he snapped up very quickly. Okay? So this is the power of the shamatha, the power of dhyana, that it makes the mind, it almost snaps us out of our addiction, makes us come to as if we're drunk, and says, wake up, snap to, and then what? And then we can really receive the benefit, the insight, the transformative power of the vipassana. So the shamatha is like the bodyguard for vipassana. But if you try to practice vipassana with a mind that is unstable, that is unclear, and you send the wise minister of your vipassana into your mind, it's going to get slaughtered by your mental afflictions. It'll carry them right away. It'll be disempowered. So there's one American novelist, a woman, I think she lives in California, and she wrote, this has been quoted many times, she said, my mind is like a bad neighborhood. I try not to go there alone. So don't go alone. Bring shamatha. Bring shamatha. And the whole point of shamatha is that it subdues, it does not eradicate. Shamatha has no power to eradicate, to cure you irreversibly, or to heal irreversibly any afflictions of the mind, not even one. You can achieve shamatha, then you can lose it. And if you lost it, then you're back to square one, back to where you were. But shamatha, the practice of shamatha, the achievement of access or the full state of dhyana, it has a great power to subdue. Almost as if you have a great enemy and you first hit him with a stun gun. You shock him into like that. So, like that. And then you can come in and finish him off, right? So it's as if you first, or almost like you hit him with an anesthetic, you first disempower the mental afflictions. So they don't have the power to dominate the mind. And then once these afflictions, these 5 hindrances are disempowered, then you can bring wisdom in, insight practice, and then cut them from the root. Okay? So a very powerful relationship between the shamatha and the vipassana. And there's a very interesting interrelationship or mapping of what are called the 5 factors of dhyana, the 5 factors of meditative stabilization, and the 5 hindrances, that in fact they antidote each other one by one. So we see this in the notes. The 5 factors of stabilization are the 5 factors of dhyana, the 5 obscurations, the 5 hindrances. Here's how this goes, and that is in sequence here, the factor of course examination. Now that's often called applied thought. I think Buddhaghosa says this is like striking a bell. When you first strike the bell, it's quite abrupt, it's applied. And then the bell continues to reverberate, and that reverberation is the sustained thought. Now it's not just thinking for a long time. So I think this one term, it's vitarka and vichara. Vitarka, or vitaka in Pali, I think it is in fact an applied investigation or directing of the mind, and it's a course investigation. That is, if you investigate something only briefly, like you scrutinize it, but just briefly, we'll call that applied thought. It's a course investigation, like I checked it. Okay, I checked it. But then if I want to look at your blouse, I look at it, it's yellow. Yeah, but what more about it? Besides yellow, what is the nature of that blouse? And then, well, I think it's cotton. And it looks like it has, I think, 1 button, maybe 2 buttons. It has a little insignia here, short-sleeved. I think it's very clean. And so when one checks it out, this is then the sustained thought, or subtle analysis, subtle investigation, that usually really takes time. So these are 2 of the jhana factors. So you can see in this first jhana, you have full access to intelligence. Full access to intelligence. It's not simply a non-conceptual state of awareness. It's not a trance, like zoned out. You have full access to your intelligence to investigate, to analyze, but your mind is not encumbered by involuntary thoughts, the blah, blah, blah of the mind, you know. It's not encumbered at all by excitation or dullness. Excitation and dullness were 2 of the obscurations, the hindrances. Yeah? And so it is stated here, this is the classic teachings from the commentaries, that the factor of course examination or applied thought removes the obscurations of laxity and dullness. And it's, in a way, it's intuitively obvious. And that is if you're focusing, I'll focus on your face. When I bring my attention to you, maybe I'm just sitting here like this, a bit spaced out. And then I go, As soon as I apply my attention now to your face, then that laxity and dullness is gone. Because I've aroused the attention, I've engaged. I'm really now focusing on something, right? So just that applied thought, that focus, that overcomes the laxity and dullness. We lose it when the mind gets disengaged and mindfulness starts to float, from the definition last night. Then we have the factor of precise investigation. This again is a sustained, very careful examination, subtle investigation, and this overcomes the obscuration of uncertainty, or this disabling doubt and uncertainty, waffling. Waffling is a good word, like it's not settling down. How? You really investigate closely, observe very closely, examine closely, and then you get clarity. And in the clarity, then the uncertainty vanishes. Okay? That's true in science, it's true in many areas. Check out closely, and then the uncertainty vanishes. So it's true here. Then we have a quality of well-being. There are two terms, pitti and sukha, or pitti and sukha in the Sanskrit, the Pali. The well-being, my understanding, is a bit more generic. It's a bit broader, a general sense of well-being, and this overcomes the hindrance of malice or ill will. Now, once again, this is quite intuitively obvious. When do we ever feel ill will and happiness at the same time? I feel so good, I really hate this person. Whoever says this, you know. I feel so happy, I really want to slug this person. Nobody says, right? Ill will, anger, hostility, resentment, rage, all of those come out of unhappiness. People don't, abuse because they're feeling so happy, right? And so if your mind is suffused, even your body, suffused by a sense of well-being, even if you're holding some resentments, people treated you badly in the past, you're not going to feel it, while your whole mind and body-mind is suffused with just an overall sense of well-being, right? So that overcomes it. And then we move to bliss. Bliss has a sharper edge to it. It's really blissful, sukha. It really is, it's joy, it's bliss, right? Something quite clear, very distinct. And this one overcomes, and it's quite interesting, this excitation and anxiety, excitation and remorse, or guilt, right? Pretty clear, isn't it? Again, it's intuitively obvious, isn't it? That as these come up, you can't be blissful and be anxious at the same time. You can't be blissful. You could imagine blissful, but excitation is this unsatiated desire. I want this, I want that. Like the mind is a little hungry ghost. Look, I want this, I want that. But if you already have bliss, then why would you be agitated wanting something else? You already got it, right? So it antidotes that. And the final one is very interesting, and that is this obscuration of sensual craving. This one's not so intuitively obvious, but it's the factor of the unification of the mind, or the single-pointed attention. And that is just this unity. The very term samadhi, I didn't give the etymology for that on the first night. I was intending to. It's samadhi, which now I think is in the English Oxford Dictionary, Oxford English Dictionary. The samadhi, the term, the etymology of this is sam, which means completely, totally, fully. Is an intensifier, like very or extremely. And di comes from the Sanskrit verbal root da, which means to place, to put. So the etymology of samadha is that your mind is really completely, sam, put together. It's completely placed, it's unified, it's coherent, it's whole. And if we go to the English word sanity, and go to its verbal root, whole. To be sane is to be healthy, which is to be whole, which is to be integrated, right? So samadhi, in this broader connotation, is not just single-pointed attention. It means that your mind you've gotten your act together, if we really put it colloquially. There's a coherence, a unification, a cohesion. You now are single-minded. So whatever you wish to attend to, the full mind is there at your service. And once again, in one phrase, the whole point of shamatha is to make your mind wondrously serviceable. So if you want to engage in creative activity, you want to raise your child, you want to go to work, you want to meditate, whatever it is, the mind is fully serviceable. That is, and it's just the opposite of the word in Sanskrit, daustulya. Daustulya, and daustulya can mean dysfunctional. It doesn't work. it's broken. It's just not. It's like a car where the cylinders are not, not firing in sequence. It's out of alignment. So it maybe moves, but you say, boy, that car's broken. Why don't you get rid of it or fix it? One of the two, right? And so all of this is designed to take a mind that is out of tune, that is in misalignment, imbalanced, and make it coherent, unified, and whole. And this quality, this unification, this single-pointedness of attention, overcomes the obscuration of sensual craving. Sensual craving. Well, sensual craving, again, is this mind roving around, like this little hungry ghost looking for something that will make it happy. But when the mind gets unified, it has no time for that. If you're focused, you never focus. Here's one thing about shamatha. You never focus on something that's going to arouse craving. Like, if you have some kind of, let's say, a sexual infatuation for someone, you don't take that person as your object of shamatha. Bad idea. Right? Or let alone sex, if you just really like chocolate. Don't think about chocolate. Don't have shamatha on chocolate. Right? Just arouse more craving. And so you're focusing on something that may arouse faith, like an image of the Buddha, may be quite neutral, like your sensations of the breath. It may be something quite interesting, just like the space of the mind and its contents. But in focusing on that, then the mind is not roving off to the various objects of sensual craving, which means it doesn't happen. Because sensual craving arises only when we are attending to that which arouses the craving. But it's almost like saying, like sensual craving knocking on your door, and you just put up sign, no vacancy, or I'm busy. I'm busy. Sorry, sensual craving. I've got no time for you. I'm focused here. Go ahead and knock yourself out. But I'm focused here. No time for you. Okay? So it's really quite masterful. I think it's quite a brilliant and very deep mapping of these 5 factors of jhana with the 5 obscurations. In terms of the different postures, we have from the Vimuttimagga, another of the classic commentaries from the Theravada tradition. And again, bear in mind there are these four postures that the Buddha himself taught in the Satipatthana Sutta and many other occasions. So in the Vimuttimagga, the author points out here that the standing and walking postures are particularly suitable for people with lustful nature, a lot of desire and craving, while the sitting and reclining, that is lying down postures, are more appropriate for anger-natured, people more inclined to hostility, anger, hatred. So, a good rule of thumb. And I would say from my own very limited experience, I certainly don't speak with the authority of the Vimuttimagga, but generally too we can speak of kind of, constitutional types. And this is body-mind. It's your physiology as well as your mind. Some people generally inclined more towards agitation. More, if you sit down, the mind starts wandering away, getting agitated, turbulent, getting caught up in thoughts. And other people, just dispositionally, they sit down and they start getting that nodding acquaintance with meditation, fading out. And so one of the two is going to be likely a bit more prevalent, some people even, but most people tend to one another, right? And so, in my experience, very limited, but I've been teaching for a while also, that for people who are more inclined to the agitation, they sit down and the mind just starts running away, the supine position can be very good. Just to calm it down, and again, in this initial phase, let your awareness come and sink down and come in contact with the earth element. It grounds, it settles, it soothes. It's almost like having, let's say, a child or let's say a frisky dog that's all agitated, like that, and saying, oh, no, they're there, caressing it a little bit, they're there, it's okay, calm down. And then the anxiety, all of that agitation, and then the child or the animal, whatever it is, and calms down. That's what we're doing to the mind. It's so agitated, so much energy, turbulent, like, oh, what? All this adrenaline rush. And say, calm down, lie down, stay. So that can be very good for agitated people. On the other hand, I've taught some people, they lie down, they immediately fall asleep. And they practice it, and they practice, and every single time they lie down, if they don't fall asleep, they just space out. They fall into dullness. Well, that's not useful. If you don't really need to meditate to have dullness. Dullness comes free. You don't have to practice for dullness. And so if you're more inclined just to getting spaced out, dull, lax, and so forth, then probably sitting is better.